Hello, my name is Clive and I'm a director at Peak Accountancy Training. We offer online courses that you can use to study towards your AAT exams at levels 2, 3 and 4. If you are interested in any of our courses, please do visit our website www.peakaccountancytraining.co.uk. Well, in this recording, I'm going to walk you through task 6 of AAT Sample Assessment 2 for the Principles of Costing exam. Task 6, as we can see, is worth a total of 12 marks and it focuses in on inventory and material valuations and also on labour costing. So let's have a look at the first requirement. We're given information about purchases and issues of raw material across the month of April. If we look at the information, we can see that we start off with 3 sets of purchases on different days, and you can see from the information as well that each time we've made a purchase, the price per metre has gradually increased. The issues that we're interested in valuing are the ones on the 28th of April, where 15,000 metres were issued from inventory to production. We finish April with some more purchases. So what we're required to do is to value the issues on the 28th of April and value the closing inventory at the end of April using FIFO, first in, first out, and AVCO, which is the weighted average inventory valuation method. So let's start off by valuing using FIFO. Now with FIFO, what we need to be able to track is which purchases we've drawn the issues from. So on the 28th of April, we issue 15,000 metres. When were those items bought? That's basically the question that we're asking. Well, first in, first out, we draw from the oldest inventory first. So we would use up all 5,000 of the metres that were bought on the 5th of April at £2. So that is £10,000 of cost so far. We still need to draw 10,000 metres from inventory. So where would we draw them from next? Well, what is now the oldest inventory? It must be the 5,500 metres that were bought on the 11th of April at £2 and 2p. So working out the value of those, 5,500 times £2, 2p, that is £11,110. So far we've drawn 10,500 metres and it has cost us a total of £21,110. So how many more units do we need to draw from inventory to get to our 15,000? Remember, 10,500 have been drawn so far. That basically means we need to draw another 4,500, which will come from the most recent purchases because they're now the oldest that we hold. So they will come from the most recent 4,750 metres held. So if we draw that 4,500, the purchase price that we paid for that 4,500 was at £2 and 4p. So that is a cost in total of £9,180. So our 15,000 metres is made up of the 5,000 bought on the 5th of April at a cost of 10,000, the 5,500 bought on the 11th of April at a cost of 11,110, and 4,500 metres from the purchases made on the 22nd of April at £2 and 4p, which is 9,180. So if we add all those values up, 9,180 plus 11,110 plus 10,000, we get a total of £30,290. Okay, well, what is our closing inventory value using FIFO? Well, by the time we've made those issues of 15,000 meters, how much inventory do we have left? Well, remember we issued 4,500 of the 4,750 bought on the 22nd of April, which basically means we have 250 meters left of that inventory. 250 meters that we paid £2.04 a metre for. So just multiplying that up, 250 times £2.04 is £510. We then end April by replenishing inventory with another purchase of 4,000 metres, this time at £2.05. So 4,000 times 2.05 is 8,200. So what is the total cost? The total cost value of what we've got in inventory. The 250 units left from the 28th of April at a total cost of £510 plus the 4,000 metres bought for £2.05 a metre, a total cost of 8,200. So the 5,110 plus the 8,200 is a total of £8,710. So with FIFO and to that extent with LIFO, last in first out, you need to keep careful track of what you bought and when and how much of that inventory is left over. What about using the AVCO method? How would we value our costs of issue? Well, what we need to do with the AVCO method is basically every time we make a purchase, we should be recalculating the average cost of everything that is held in inventory. The reality is we really only need to do that calculation to work out the average cost of a unit held in inventory just before any issue from inventory. So basically, if we add up the total cost that we've paid for the purchases up to the end of the 22nd of April first, we can work out the average cost per unit of what we're holding. So that would be 5,000 meters at £2, which is £10,000. 5,500 meters at £2.02, which is 11,110, and then 4,750 meters at £2.04, which is 9,690. The total cost of what we've bought, 10,000 plus 11,110 plus 9,690. The total cost is 30,800, and that is the cost of how many units in total, how many meters in total. Add 5,500 to 5,000, add 4,750 to that. 15,250 meters have cost us in total £30,800. So what is the average unit cost of what we've bought? £30,800 divided by 15,250. Many decimal places. So let's just check the question. We've got to do the costs of the issue and the closing inventory values to the nearest whole pound. Well, basically, looking at the average unit cost, it comes out at 2.019671. So I'm going to keep that unrounded figure in my calculator because that is the cost per unit I'm going to use to value the issues of 15,000. So multiplying that by 15,000 gives me a cost of £30,295. I'm allowed to value to the nearest whole pound this time. So 30,295. So what about the value of the closing inventory at the end of April? Well, I now know the cost of my issues. I know that the cost of everything I've purchased up to that point was £30,800. So basically, if I take that 30,800, I deduct my 30,295, I get £505. That is the cost value of what I'm left in inventory after the issues on the 28th of April. I just need to work out then the total cost of the 4,000 meters bought on the 30th of April. So that's 4,000 times 2.05. That's 8,200. Add the 505 to that, gives me £8,705. Okay, so for the AVCO method, just before an issue is made, work out the average cost per unit of the inventory that you hold. Use that costing to value any subsequent issues. So every time you make a purchase, that average unit cost effectively gets revalued. Okay, well, let's have a look at part B. We've got a true or false sequence this time. This is about buffer stock. So the first question, reducing buffer stock will help to reduce storage costs. Well, buffer stock is an amount of stock that you would keep just to make sure that you didn't run out of stock. So you've got a buffer in there that you can use if there's some excess demand, for example, whilst you wait for replenishment of inventory to come in. So that buffer stock is obviously increasing the amount of inventory that you hold, and of course that is going to mean that your storage costs are going to be higher because that buffer stock is there. So if you reduce your buffer stock, the space you need for storage, for example, will shrink, and therefore your storage costs will reduce. So that statement is true. Our second statement, in terms of changing prices, increasing your buffer stock will help to stabilize the cost of inventory held. Well, if you've got some buffer stock in there, then you've secured that at a known price. If you didn't have the buffer stock, you would be exposed to having to buy in inventory if there's excess demand, and if prices are rising, for example, you would be running the risk of escalating costs. So having the buffer stock, you've already paid for those items, you have basically secured the price, so you've stabilized the cost of your inventory. So both of those statements are actually true. The final part of our task here is about labour costing, and we're given some information to enable us to work out the wage elements of two employees, S. Roscoe and M. Cross. They're in different teams. Roscoe's in team A, Cross is in team B. We're given information about the hours they've both worked and the units they've produced. Now, in terms of how the pay is calculated, we're given that information. So Johnson Limited pays a time rate, £25 for every hour to its direct workforce. That's for a standard 35-hour week. They pay no overtime if the employees have worked more than the standard 35 hours. So they're doing that for nothing, basically. During the 35-hour week, they are expected to produce 350 units. If they produce more than that, then they are entitled to a bonus that works out at £2 per unit. There are 3 people in each team, and if all 3 exceed the 350 units, there's a team bonus of £60 divided equally between the 3 members of the team. Team A exceeded all targets, however, Team B didn't. So let's use that information to work out what we're going to be paying each of these employees. So Roscoe is in Team A to start with. Roscoe is going to get a share of that team bonus. He's going to get a third of that £60. So I'm going to pop that £20 in straight away. Now, what about the basic wage? Well, Roscoe is paid £25 for every hour, but to a maximum of 35 hours. Roscoe did 36 hours. That extra hour of overtime is attracting 0 pay. So the basic wage is based on 35 hours at £25, which is £875. The individual bonus, well, Roscoe has clearly produced more than the 350 units expected, so exceeded that standard measure by 15 units. Each of those 15 units is going to pick up a bonus of £2. So Roscoe is going to pick up a £30 bonus. So what about M Cross? Worked 35 hours will get £25 for each of those hours. So 35 times 25 is 875, exactly the same as Roscoe. Individual bonus, Cross has produced 355 units, which is 5 more than the standard expected. So each of those 5 is going to pick up a bonus of £2. So that's £10 in total. However, we're told that not all of Team B exceeded the standard units they were expected to produce. So no team bonus has been issued. So Cross basically gets nothing. So there we go. There's our wage calculations for the 2 members of staff.